What is up, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Shiv, and today we're actually going to be looking at some of the actual in-game work-in-progress footage of the subs, how they're going to play. Now, I made a commentary video, and then I noticed, hey, look, they actually put out a video of how this is going to look, so let's go and watch this. I've watched this several times now. I've gone through and I've worked out some of the stats and the math, and I can tell you right now, there are a couple things that I find concerning. Now, it should be noted that everything in here is amped up for the whole, proof of concept testing purpose. Okay, this is something we have to accept. The actual live implication of the system is probably going to be tuned down dramatically. All right, so we're going to try to gloss over some of those glaring issues. We're going to try. We may bring up one or two. All right, so here's what we need to know. Subs exist in 3 vertical planes: surface, subsurface, and deep water. What is deep water? Basically, I have the least amount of detection. You need to be damn near on top of me to see me or using hydroacoustic. Have a nice day. Subsurface, basically periscope depth. Hi, I can launch torpedoes at here and I'm really stealthy. By the way, my torpedoes are unaffected by anything, i.e. there's no dispersion on them. Surface. Hi, I have the greatest amount of detectability, and my torpedoes now suffer dispersion. Translation: the best time to fire is when you are slightly underwater. This makes some sense. Now, a couple things here. Reload time on torps, distance on torps. These are going to be things that are going to have to be paid attention to. You cannot fire in giant salvos like you could do with, say, your destroyers. This was something that inevitably led to a lot of anger in Navy field when they introduced submarines, because you could literally just fire all your torps at once in a giant gut punch that pretty much neutralized any battleship in the game. Any of them. All right. And it actually led to a lot of controversy and a lot of drama that inevitably led to some championship level players getting permanently banned from the game. They were part of the testing team. And when they were making complaints about the new subsystem to the developers, they handled themselves like whiny little children and said some very unflattering things to the developer. Thou shalt not bite the hand that feeds you. All right, moving on. Subs also have a fuel system for being underwater. It is air. As long as you're above water, you are building up your air tank. As long as you're below water, you're consuming your air tank. Makes perfect sense. Now, those values of how quickly it recharges and how quickly it consumes, which at this time it's looking at 1-for-1 underwater and slightly increased for above water in terms of it recharges faster than it is consumed. That might be something that gets changed later on. We don't 100% know yet. Again, this is all for, proof of concept, so not something to really be taken overly seriously. Now, you also notice that torpedoes are very interesting here. You've got multiple banks. Each one's controlled by either the 1, 2, or 3. Leads to some very interesting things. You've got submarines with rear torpedo launchers, which is kind of fun, to be perfectly honest with you. And in all honesty, the gameplay just looks kind of fun. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room. Well, if submarines are here and they're going to be in the game, what's the counter to them? Well, historically, it would be destroyers and escorts. Unfortunately, there are no escorts in the game. Yes, we don't have hookers in the game. No, not those escorts, Shiv. No, we mean the super small boats. I really wish we would be getting escorts into the game, because then that means we might actually see the USS Eldridge, which is something I've been asking for in this game for about 1.5 years now. Like every time the developers ask, hey, what ship would you like to see in the game? I always say the same thing, USS Eldridge, just because it's got some really great history and the possibility of it having basically a jump drive system to allow it to bounce across the map at any given time seems like a really fun idea. Yes, I know, broken as all hell, but it would still be pretty fun. That, and it was something that Nikola Tesla worked on, and yay, Tesla. All right, so back to all seriousness. We'll never probably see escorts into the game. If you thought destroyers had some pretty low caliber guns, you've never seen what an escort actually has, even though they would be much faster, have probably better depth charge possibilities, as well as possibly having hedgehog launchers and better hydroacoustic / sonar. They're just probably not going to end up in a game. So the next obvious choice for the counterplay is going to be destroyers. Here's where problems start to manifest. Destroyers are right now in a really bad place in the game. Thanks to radar, the U.S. light cruiser line has completely made destroyers' life a living hell. Radar has become basically the go-to choice. You look at ranked play, everybody has at least 2 to 3 radar ships in there. It's gotten to the point where a lot of people are not bringing destroyers into play, and it's just radar ships and the occasional Minotaur because, you know, Minotaur plus Worcester equals YOLO. It's actually a lot of fun. And this has led to a lot of really angry complaints on threads and forums and things of that nature. But it is what it is. So now having to add another duty onto destroyers is kind of crappy. Like, destroyers have the biggest workload of any ship in this game, all right, or any classification of ships in this game. They have to spot, they have to cap, they have to engage other destroyers, they have to basically do zone denial with their torpedoes, they have to avoid detection. They've got like so many things going on that a good destroyer player is not a very common thing. A bad destroyer player, however, is extremely common, extremely common. So adding something else, i.e. you are going to go hunt the DDs, is a little unfair. Not to mention the fact that not many destroyers actually have hydroacoustic. Yes, of course, the Germans have hydroacoustic because Germany. And of course, you got the Lo Yang and a couple other ships here or there. But on a whole, not all of them do. If they did, it'd be a very interesting meta we actually exist in. All of them would basically be kind of, you know, copy-paste with marginal differences here or there. Whether or not that's good or bad, we'll have to wait and see. So that, I think, is going to be problematic. Now, the other thing we have to consider is the main weapon going to be used to actually hurt submarines when they're under the water. That's depth charges. Well, obviously, destroyers have depth charges. I actually went and looked through the tech trees from like the tier N across, or yeah, tier 10 across, and almost every single sub had depth charges that I can visibly see on their ship, with the exception of the Shimakaze. I think I saw maybe 2 on there, and that one I wasn't 100% sure on, but I'm pretty sure it was like at least 2 on it. So yeah, that's not overly that good either. When you see the footage here of depth charges in action, they're highly inaccurate. But mind you, this is from this event, and those depth charges are actually being launched by towers. So they're just kind of being flung at the ship, similar to, say, like volley fire, okay? Not overly spectacular. But if this comes live, i.e. we now get tech trees and things of that nature, they're probably going to have to look at how they're going to use depth charges, and that's going to have to get a real serious look at. Now, it's not just destroyers who had depth charges. Light cruisers had them too. I even looked, all right? Even the Cleveland had depth charges. The Atlanta has depth charges. So all the light cruisers, and pretty much all of the Russians up to like the Donskoy, have depth charges. So light cruisers will have it. Heavy cruiser-wise, not so much. Looking at the rune right now in my game, I'm looking right now, and I'm not really seeing any sort of depth charges on there. Nope, no depth charges. Yes, it has the hydro, but it has no way of actually utilizing it with depth charges. So does that mean that heavy cruisers can't do anything against submarines? No, that's not true. As you've seen in the video, they take a lot of damage. That one little blast from the towers did like 3,300 damage, and a couple shell hits ended up doing another 1,000 damage. Submarines generally don't have that much life. They're actually less life than any of their analog destroyers. So getting any sort of damage on them is going to have a much greater impact. All right, so if you're normally doing like 5,000 a salvo onto, say, a destroyer, you're probably going to do a lot more against a submarine if you can hit it. Remember, these are smaller and a little bit more annoying to try to deal with. But remember, folks, they are slower. So this is going to be shooting. This will be a lot like shooting, say, like a tier 3 or 4 battleship in terms of trying to shoot a destroyer. It's just going to be a much smaller target, but you won't have to lead nearly as much. So there's that caveat there. But the moment you start shooting at it, he's going to start diving under the water. So here's where that whole how long it takes to transition from plane is really going to factor in. If they make that time too fast, all right, then shooting at a submarine is going to be virtually impossible unless they have some sort of preset limits, like you can only dive back down if you get 50% of your air. If they do that, then that would be a lot better. And then we have to start looking at how long it takes to actually reaccumulate air, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of different variables there for balancing purposes. And in all honesty, I don't think anybody really needs to worry about any of this stuff yet, okay? We're nowhere near even having this in the game. The Halloween event is basically proof of concept. If it works out well, then in the future, we might actually see this. And as I stated in a previous video, it makes perfect sense that they would go to submarines. It's the one biggest collection of ships that they have never once touched in the game, even though they had the most influence in how the war actually played out. With the exception of aircraft carriers, they were the second biggest influential ships in the history of World War II, but they are not represented in the game. Now, we all know the story that pretty much the developer said, no, we are not doing anything with subs. Never, 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 never. Well, here we are some 3 years later. Now they're going, yeah, maybe we can actually start talking about it. So I'm definitely liking this. It definitely shows some cool acceptance of things. Like I said, I hope this will eventually lead to escort ships for my own personal bias reason, because yay, Philadelphia experiment. But again, we'll have to wait and see. But all in all, I am really happy to see this. Just a little side note though, if they do make subs a real thing, I will tell you one of the first premium subs you are going to see, and I guarantee it's going to be a tier 8 French sub known as a sub cruiser. I can't pronounce its name too well, but it was a sub with 6 torpedoes in the front, 4 in the rear, and 2 8-inch guns on its deck. Yes, you heard me right. It mounted 2 203mm guns. That thing is going to be insane, and I really hope they bring it into the game. I would love to play that thing. I would absolutely love to play it. I think it would be really, really fun. But yeah, that's just my, my 2 cents, my thoughts. What do you think? Are you excited to see this gameplay? Do you think that this is a big mistake? Are you happy for it? Are you going to support it? Are you going to be against it? Let me know down in the comment section below. Anyway, guys, till next time, Shiv saying, stay safe, have fun, may orange juice bless you. I'm out.